Welcome back to this special one-hour edition of Mediaweek, coming to you from the Pampa Future Forum, the gathering of the newspaper industry. Well, our next guest, a speaker at the forum, thinks that technology will save journalism, not kill it. Caleb Solomon is the managing editor of the Boston Globe, and last year reorganised its newsroom and launched the subscriber-paid website bostonglobe.com, as well as keeping the free website boston.com, and of course the print edition as well of the Boston Globe. Caleb, thanks so much for speaking to us. I firstly just wanted to ask you about your message to Australian publishers and what they've been wanting to hear most from you here.
Well, I know they want to hear a lot about the subscription site and how that's going, and we're going to talk a heck of a lot about that because mostly so far it's going well. We have a pile of new subscribers, and frankly, they're paying us for content in ways they never did before, so we have a new revenue stream for our journalism. And then there's that really at the core of it is, frankly, the journalism itself. It's quality journalism, and that's worth paying for. So we focus a lot on doing our work, doing stories that matter to our community, and that's the kind of thing that we find people really want and value.
Was there sort of a turning point that you've had in the last couple of years in juggling that sort of delivery of content via digital and either paid digital or print?
Yeah. Well, what we've found, in our market, we are the dominant news organization. Most big stories start with us. Most medium stories start with us. I don't mean being modest. Most small stories kind of start with us and work their way out into the community. So what our strategy is to take all of the work we're doing, our newsroom is doing, the potent work our newsroom is doing, and sort of shoot it out on multiple channels. And the phrase integrated newsroom comes up a lot nowadays, where you take the same content and push it into a variety of places. We've been doing that for a good number of years lately, and we've invested in some new technology that's made that a lot more simpler and more efficient. So if we're breaking a story, we're breaking it in a lot of different places. We may be breaking on video as well as with a print story as well.
Yeah. And I guess going back to that quote then from you, that you think technology will save journalism, not kill it.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think then? Is it so far?
So far it's working. We are competing with the giant technology companies of the world. If you think about it, Google is a news site, Yahoo is a news site, MSNBC is a news site. They're all, you're a technology-driven organization as well. So in order to compete with that and do really well, we need to be much more of a technology company than we ever were before, because the audience has expected it. Our world has changed. You, me, everybody. We sit there with a smartphone probably, looking at news, looking at information in ways that a year ago, 3 years ago, and for sure 5 years ago, we never even imagined. So in order to keep up, to sort of continue to serve people what they need and the way they want it, we clearly need to be much smarter about technology, and it helps do all amazing things for us.
Now, you're running the two websites, the Boston.com and the Boston Globe.
Right.
Is there an ongoing debate about, look, just how much do you give away free and how do you juggle that sort of tightrope?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We focus a lot on keeping the two sort of as separate identity as possible, and we've actually changed some of how we view the site over time. So initially, mostly on bostonglobe.com in a big way, it's most of the exclusive enterprise journalism, the scoops, the major features, the major breaking news. If we're writing something about politician gone wrong, that's going to be on bostonglobe.com first if we're breaking it. If it's news that's just happening everywhere, then it'll be on both sites. And we've made adjustments along the way. So initially, for instance, sports coverage from the Globe was on both sites because we're such a sports town, sports fanatics, and sports drives so much of our traffic. But then we looked at it and we thought, well, what if we take our brand name sports columnists who are incredibly popular, what if we put them only on bostonglobe.com? What will happen? And we found that there wasn't much harm to boston.com, but it drove more subscribers to bostonglobe.com because they wanted to read what the columnists had to say about all the sporting events going on.
Were you linked between one and the other, or do they pretty much stand alone?
They stand alone. One can point to the other, so there's sort of a large chunk of boston.com's homepage that gives you the opportunity to see what's on bostonglobe.com to try to lure you over there.
And obviously that's one source of revenue, the subscribers, but what do the advertisers, where do they want to be? Do they prefer the free site or the subscriber site?
It really depends. So boston.com remains an advertiser-driven website. All the ads, they pop up, they fly around, they zoom, they take over the homepage, all that kind of thing, and that remains. Excuse me. What's different, though, about BostonGlobe.com is because the subscribers are paying for it, we have far fewer ads. The advertising is more sedate. It's a different kind of experience for the reader. And we found that there's advertisers who are really interested in sort of being in that environment as opposed to sort of the more colorful, the more dynamic Boston.com website.
And sort of to what extent do you sort of lead your digital readers down a path, or your print readers? Do you sort of try to encourage the digital take-up, or are you happy to let them, just luxuriate in the print offering?
We're happy wherever they are. We built BostonGlobe.com in a way so that you could read it really well, whether you read it on an iPhone, whether you read it on a tablet, a laptop, or just get the paper on your front doorstep delivered every morning. However people want to read it right now, it seems we need to give it to them. We're at that moment where people want a lot of different things, and there's absolutely no doubt. I know it's the same here, where there are people who just want the newspaper and they want it in their hands and they want to hold it, and on the other hand there are people who are sitting there with a tablet and thinking, what in the world are you doing holding a newspaper when you can read it on your iPad? We want to give them the news as well.
Caleb Solomon, Managing Editor of the Boston Globe, thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Thank you.
Well, of course, newspaper stocks among those, certainly seeing some big moves in the past week or so. Let's get some analysis now on the share market and the performance of media stocks on the share market this week. Here's Chris Weston from IG Markets.
Yeah, good afternoon. I think one of the stories which really jumps out is Nine selling ACP magazines for about £500 million Australian dollars. The implications of this longer term are yet to be known. I mean, straight away it'd be nice if both of these companies, Bauer Media and Nine, were both listed, because you could see how the stock market's treating this. I'd imagine they'd be quite positive for Nine, given they need to refinance $2.8 billion worth of debt going forward. I think this would certainly alleviate those problems. I think the market would also suggest that this increases the likelihood of a potential suitor further down the line. So that would have been a very interesting scenario, but it's a story we're continuing to look at as Nine obviously try and pay off some of that debt longer term. Otherwise, it's been an absolutely crazy week here in Media Land. First of all, you can point out straight away APN. Now, APN, we saw Peter Myers stepping down, resigning. He's been considered by many a bit of a rock at the company under that CFO position, and really guiding the CEO and the chairman, who have limited media experience going forward. And I think the stock dropped nearly 30% on that day. The snapback has been quite aggressive as well over the next couple of days. We saw it up 25%, and now it's back down at that 32-cent level. So a very volatile ride. But since last Thursday, down about 18%. So not particularly great week for shareholders there. And you can also look at Fairfax. New low coming through, new 50-week, new all-time low at 41 cents. Having a bit of a rally today. It's up 5% or so from those 41-cent lows. But yeah, it's still a tough gig, and you can't imagine a huge amount of upside for Fairfax in the short term at the moment. Otherwise, on the downside, you've got Southern Cross Media down about 6% since last Thursday. You can look at Seven West Media down 8% from last Thursday. But it's not all negative. There are some positive stories as well. We can look. Prime Media came out with a blockbuster result last Thursday. Absolutely smashed expectations. About 22% above above the consensus net profit. About 10% above the EBITDA expectations of the market. And it's up about 8% since last Thursday. You can also point out News Corp. News Corp's now trading at a new 52-week high, trading at $23.50, up 3.5% since last week. So clearly that's the place to be at the moment. And hopefully we can see those gains continue to push higher.
Chris Weston there from IG Markets. Well, our next guest, after nearly 30 years as a journalist, media executive, and time too in corporate and public affairs, now teaches at the Poynter Institute, helping newsrooms deal with the rising digital age. Butch Ward, Managing Director at the Poynter Institute, joins us now. Butch, thanks so much for coming on the show. You must attend a lot of conferences and forums. Are the learnings growing? Are publishers getting better at facing this new future?
I think there's a growing awareness that things have to change. The audience has moved. The audience is no longer on the sidelines waiting for the journalism industry to change. They have moved. They're talking to each other by the millions and millions every day on social media. They're getting their information from each other and from other sources. And so I think there's a growing awareness that the newspaper industry has to embrace technology and embrace the audience.
Now, look, we like asking people when they get off the plane what they think about the country.
The weather has been lovely.
But you've been here all of 24 hours. You've heard a little bit of the conference this morning.
Yes.
Do you get the feeling that we're sort of at a similar stage? The US newspaper industry is at, or do you think we're a bit ahead of what you guys have faced, or we've got a bit of catch up to go?
I think that the cuts in the United States in the newspaper industry have been more severe to this point. I think the economy has hit us harder. However, the same trends that are forcing change in the U.S. they're at work here too. Smartphones in Australia are far more prevalent than they are in the United States. And that's one indication that the audience has a new expectation for where they will get their information and how they will get their information. They want it now. They want it where they are. And there are a lot of newspaper companies are not ready to answer that.
I just want to ask you another question. I mean, obviously we're a show focused on media and the business of media, but do you think that newspaper readers or consumers generally are tiring at all of hearing about the future of the business? I mean, should publishers keep it in-house, do you think?
No. I think that the public's experience with newspaper publishers for as long as they can remember was all the discussions were in-house. The audience was not included in the discussion. We delivered news one way, directly to them, and then we maybe accepted 2 or 3 letters to the editor back a day, and we published them, and that was the extent of that was the extent of our interaction. I think the audience wants to be part of the conversation. They want to know whether or not we care about what they're doing, what they think, what their needs are. And are they getting tired of it? They're probably getting tired of waiting for it to happen.
We hear a lot about a success story like the Wall Street Journal, what they've been able to do with their digital audiences and monetize all that. But there are other sort of smaller papers around the country that have got some sort of good news stories too?
Yes, and I'd be quick to point out that success stories are relative. No one has found a cure for what ails us. There is no silver bullet. But there are a number of organizations that are doing interesting things and are making progress, and I'll quickly point to 3. The Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel in Wisconsin is a metropolitan newspaper that faced the same problem many others do, how to reconfigure themselves after cuts. And what they did was they made a bet on high-impact public service journalism. They put 10 reporters in that group, and they do what we call watchdog work, where they watch their government spend their money, and etc. They've won 2 Pulitzer Prizes already, and they're developing a reputation in their market for that. The Seattle Times in Washington State has done a good job of partnering with local bloggers who cover the very local community in a way that the Times, with its cuts, is not able to do any longer. But together, they create good coverage. And the third one I'd point out is the Tampa Bay Times, which I must say the Poynter Institute is the owner of. But they developed something called PolitiFact. And PolitiFact is a fact checker. Now, I know this sounds a little bit ironic that we would talk about whether journalists need to check the facts. But the fact is that we have gotten much better at accurately recording what people say than we have been at actually holding them to whether or not what they say is true. PolitiFact does that. If a public figure makes a statement, it goes back and reports whether that statement's true, and then issues a ruling. True, mostly false, or pants on fire. And as hard as it may be to believe, that feature, which has caught on and become very popular, won a Pulitzer Prize 2 years ago in America. So I think all of those papers have done a good job of embracing the digital age and bringing it into the mainstream while they have preserved their legacy business. And is it a cure? No, but I think they're on the right track.
Butch Ward, the Poynter Institute, thank you so much for chatting with us today. Do stay with us, plenty more coming up as we look at some of the other news happening in the media sector this week. We are live from the annual gathering of the newspaper industry, the Pampa Future Forum.